Number 10. The giant hogfish. The giant hogfish is a rare fish that lives in the western Indian Ocean, from Somalia and Kenya to the Gulf of Oman. In 2019, YouTube channel KV published a video of their fishing adventure in Oman when they actually caught a giant hogfish. Its striking dark purple colouring and enormous fangs shocked the group. They just could not believe what they had caught. They were so excited. But they didn't know what it was, but they called it a rare type of parrot vampire fish because of its creepy teeth and red eyes, but it was the strange, magical hogfish. Their guide said you could only catch them in this area. The fishing team quickly released it back into the water after getting some quick, amazing footage. Underwater along the rocks, there were 3 more of these hogfish checking them out. Viewers applauded their catch and release tactics instead of spearing it or taking it as a trophy. A few people said they should have just kept it and sold it, but the majority were just happy to see a live one and enjoy the group's experience. KV commented it was like catching the rarest Pokemon of them all and then letting it go. They have been overfished in many areas because apparently they taste really good, but this purple beauty lived to see another day. What would you do if you caught an extremely rare fish? Let it go? Eat it? Let us know in the comments below. Number 9. Mandarin Fish. The mandarin fish is a tiny little creature with a whole lot of vibrant colours. It's not dangerous or exciting, but it is very unique. Mandarin fish are saltwater fish, and they are members of the dragonet family. The most colourful of all fish in this family is the striped mandarin fish. It is native to the Pacific Ocean and looks a lot like a goby. They are only about 3 inches in size and are certainly unique with all their bright orange and blue stripes. This actually makes them popular fish for people's home aquariums. But if you ever want to keep one of these fish, you should keep in mind that they have very weird dietary requirements. The mandarin fish usually will not eat anything except live food. If you try to give it pellet food or frozen food, it will simply starve. Not all fish are meant to be kept in aquariums, and this is one little guy that's better off swimming around in the great big blue. Number 8. Christmas tree worms. While not technically a fish, it is in fact a marine worm that lives in tropical coral reefs all around the world and looks just like a pretty Christmas tree. The creature is actually known as the Christmas tree worm, and it comes in a massive variety of colours. You can typically find these worms living on big rocks under the ocean in clusters of a few dozen, with each of them being made up of 2 unique colours. Every worm has 2 separate crowns that protrude from their tube-shaped body, and each crown is slightly different. The effect is a living worm that looks like a fir tree, with one colour on the inside and a brighter colour along the fringes like Christmas tree lights. The crown consists of radials, which are appendages kind of like bristly strands of hair that are used for the worm to breathe and to catch dinner. For food, these worms love to eat microscopic plants and phytoplankton that swim by them in the water, since they're sedentary and hardly ever move once they settle down. Once they find a good spot, they can live there for up to 30 years. Have you ever seen a Christmas tree worm? Let me know in the comments section below, and don't forget to give this video a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 7. Clownfish. Everyone loves the clownfish. There is no tiny fish in the sea quite as unique or remarkable as the clownfish, and its popularity is all thanks to Finding Nemo. Thanks to the animated movie, clownfish are now beloved sea creatures no matter where you go in the world. So, let's take a look at some of the things that make the clownfish truly unique. First, there are actually 30 different species of clownfish. They live in the warm waters of reefs in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. And schools of clownfish must abide by a strict hierarchy. Unlike a pride of lions or something where the strongest male leads the pack, clownfish schools are ruled by the most aggressive female. Imagine if the angriest woman in your office was the boss just because she had a bad attitude. This is how clownfish operate. Not very funny if you ask me, but here's where clownfish gets even more unique. According to the Living Planet, every single one of them is born male. They are one of the only animals in the world that can change their sex at will. When the dominant female at the top of the hierarchy dies, the dominant male will then switch its sex and become female. If you are confused, don't worry, so are the clownfish. But here's where it gets even better. All the male clownfish are super dedicated fathers. They prepare the nest for when the female arrives, and then when she leaves, they guard the eggs and keep the nest clean. Male clownfish are the best homemakers in the animal kingdom. That must be why Disney chose a clownfish for Finding Nemo. Number 6. Royal Gramma. Let's check out perhaps the most boring fish in the world. Just kidding. I'm talking about the Royal Gramma fish. It's very unique, it's very small, and actually quite common. They have a vibrant colour scheme and appealing attitude, so that's good, as some pet fish can be bullies to other fish in aquariums. These fish are super peaceful, they're typically half purple and half yellow, and they are great for beginner fish keepers according to Fish Keeping World. If you're looking for a very unique fish to add to your collection, a royal Gramma fish is actually going to be a great option. These fish come from the Caribbean, so you know they have a good attitude. They can live for up to 5 years, they grow to a maximum of about 3 inches, and they provide any space with a huge boost of colour. These fish are also dirt cheap. You can pick one up for only $20, but I wouldn't suggest frying it up to eat, as that would be an enormous waste of money. While the fish is half purple and half yellow, in the middle where the two colours meet, you will notice a pattern of fading dots. And this is probably the most unique feature on the fish. Why on earth nature has done this, I will never know. Number 5. Wolffish. It's time for possibly one of the ugliest fish in the world. The wolffish is a unique specimen simply because it is so unsettling to look at. You almost feel sad looking at its snaggled teeth and wrinkly skin. But don't feel too bad yet. The Atlantic wolffish is a voracious predator according to Oceana. It has a large head, extremely strong jaws, and enormous teeth that it uses to feast on sea urchins, crabs, and even snails. The wolffish is a carnivore with special adaptations that allow it to feed on the hard-shelled animals. In fact, its name in Norwegian is steinbit, meaning stone crusher. This fish can grow to be 5 feet in length, and they hang out in the cold waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. Another unique trait that the wolffish has is in its blood, where it basically has antifreeze coursing through its fish veins that keep it from freezing in such cold waters. The wolffish has a body a lot like an eel, but don't worry, they won't shock you and they aren't very aggressive to people. They are most closely related to sculpins, which is another very ugly fish. In fact, anything related to the wolffish is quite hideous. But hey, depending on who you are, you might consider the wolffish mildly adorable. Number 4. Emperor Angelfish. The Emperor Angelfish is something of an enigma. The fish changes dramatically from juvenile to adult. When the fish is young, it's mostly black with a very unique spiral pattern that takes up most of its body. But as it grows to adulthood, these spiral circles become wavy lines across its body, and that's the angelfish that you're probably familiar with. You can even catch these fish in the super popular game Animal Crossing. Have you caught one yet? Emperor angelfish are actually relatively aggressive. It might not bite your finger, but on the other hand, it just might. These fish are omnivores and can grow to be around 1¼ feet in length, according to Animal Planet. They come mostly from the Western Pacific Oceans and survive by eating marine algae and any shrimp that happen to get close enough to be eaten. To be quite honest, the Emperor angelfish doesn't have much of a personality, but because of its weird patterns and bright colours, it is one of the most unique. Number 3. Sunfish. Sunfish, also called molar molars, are kind of unbelievable. The ocean sunfish is actually the heaviest fish in the world. These don't even really deserve to be fish. How can a fish be so big? They can weigh around 5,000 pounds, and they grow to reach 14 feet in vertical height. The weirdest part about them, and what makes them truly unique, is that they don't even really look like fish. The ocean sunfish looks more like a blimp floating through the ocean. They don't have any scales, and are instead covered with an elastic skin which is known to host at least 40 different parasites. The sunfish is crawling with so many parasites that the parasites have parasites. Don't worry, I'm done saying parasites. Molar molars also love to sunbathe. They can spend most of their day near the surface of the water just basking in the sun, which also helps them warm up after diving deep to hunt and eat. Another unique feature of the sunfish is that a single female can lay somewhere around 300 million eggs per brood. Imagine if you could give birth to 300 million babies at one time. You would literally die. But this unique trait has earned the sunfish a spot in a Guinness Book of World Records for laying more eggs than any other animal. Number 2. Pointed Sawfish. The pointed sawfish looks like a weird mix between a hammerhead shark and a normal swordfish, but flattened using a giant press. This is a weird and very unique creature. It can grow to be over 20 feet in length. It has between 18 and 22 pairs of lateral teeth going along its giant knife nose. It basically has teeth lining its entire snout, but it doesn't use these teeth for chewing. It uses them as a weapon. The sawfish's nose is covered with little pores that allow it to pick up electrical fields that other fish produce. The saw then becomes a homing beacon as the sawfish chases down its target. And when the sawfish finds its target, it then drives its long, sharp nose through them like Vlad the Impaler. Even more disturbing is that some sawfish are so strong that they can slash with enough force to cut their prey clean in half. You wouldn't want to get in their way. Number 1. Humpback Anglerfish. I think the final fish on our list for today is not only unique, but it might also give you nightmares tonight. I'm talking about the Humpback Anglerfish. This thing should probably stay in the deep sea and as far away from the civilized world of human beings. The Humpback Anglerfish is also known as a deep sea anglerfish, and it has a ridiculously large mouth with an equally large stomach and extremely long and pointy teeth. It can basically swallow anything stupid enough to get near its mouth. The Humpback Anglerfish is just like other anglerfish in that it has a lure which it hangs over its mouth as an attractant for fish. The lure is actually filled with bacteria, and it's the bacteria that make it glow. However, the anglerfish can actually hide the light from the lure by using a muscular skin flap. Out of all the anglerfish in the sea, the humpback is for sure the most unique, simply because of its absolutely horrendous appearance. This thing was never designed to come out of the depths. It lives around 6,600 feet below the ocean surface. Number 10. Allosaurus. The Allosaurus is one of the older dinosaurs from the long time period when giant lizards ruled the earth, living about 150 million years ago during the late Jurassic period, almost 70 million years before the T-Rex made its first appearance. That's right, this monster was actually twice as old as the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and may have been an ancestor of that powerful beast. Most of the fossils of the Allosaurus were found in the United States, in a quarry in Utah, and at a different quarry in Colorado. This monster stood 30 feet in length, with half of its body consisting of its ridiculously long tail. It had strong limbs, small forelimbs that were basically useless, but not quite as useless as those of the T-Rex, and, like almost every other lizard dinosaur of the time, 3 fingers that each ended in a sharp claw, which the Allosaurus probably used to tear at the prey. What's really interesting is that the Allosaurus is one of the biggest scavengers of all time. It almost only ate living animals if it could easily trap and kill them. Otherwise, the Allosaurus would spend its time feeding on the carcasses of other animals. Still, that doesn't mean it wasn't dangerous. If you ever tried to fight this fearsome predator, it would literally snap you with its tail and probably break your spine. Number 9. Ankylosaurus. The Ankylosaurus is a general favourite of a lot of different humans. You will definitely recognise this dinosaur by the huge club that it had for a tail. It had a giant sledgehammer that it could swing around at will, and it even had a helmet of bone and a full suit of armour. The largest Ankylosaurus specimen ever discovered measured 20.5 feet in length, according to a recent study published in the Canadian Journal of Earth Sciences. Most experts agree it weighed at least 4 tons. Unlike the lizard dinosaurs that feasted on flesh and blood, the Ankylosaurus was pretty docile. Instead of being geared towards killing, it had evolved to defend itself. This is why the top of the dinosaur was nearly completely blanketed with a thick armour of knobs and oval plates of bone. These are the same types of plated bone found on crocodiles, other modern lizards, and even armadillos. The bones form within the skin, creating the ultimate defense against predators with sharp teeth. As for the true danger of the Ankylosaurus, it's all about the tail. A typical Ankylosaurus tail measured around 10 feet long and could be used to literally smash the shins of any predator dumb enough to get close. Considering how big this monster was and how small humans are, getting hit by this club would be similar to being kicked in the chest by a horse. Dinosaurs evolved to have all sorts of strange weapons built into their bodies. Number 8. Spinosaurus. The Spinosaurus is recognised as the largest carnivorous dinosaur that's ever lived on our planet. You're going to drop your jaw when you hear how large this dinosaur was. It's almost hard to comprehend. The Spinosaurus stood at 52.5 feet tall, and it was as heavy as a herd of adult Asian elephants. Plus, the Spinosaurus had a gigantic sail of skin on its back that was supported by 2 long spines, making it a truly magnificent beast to behold. But what's really fascinating about the Spinosaurus is that new evidence suggests it spent as much time in the water as it did on land. It could eat fish and fight sharks, then go back on land and fight a T-Rex. It was truly the ultimate apex predator. The Spinosaurus was more ferocious than any other dinosaur, it was more versatile than any other land carnivore, and it was larger than anything we've seen since. Strong, fast, with huge claws and sharp teeth. Plus, it taught itself how to swim. It even had special structures inside of its snout that allowed it to detect pressure waves made by other animals moving nearby in the water. That's like having a sonar system built into your nose. Have you ever seen a skeleton of a dinosaur? Or a fossil? Tell us about it in the comments below. And if you're new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe to Epic Wildlife for more amazing videos just like this one. Number 7. Utahraptor. The Utahraptor was a close cousin of the famous Velociraptor, which you met in the original Jurassic Park movie. But it's actually much larger and more dangerous than its cousin. The mighty Utahraptor had claws that were 12 inches long and shaped like sickles found on each hind foot. It used its claws to rip and tear while basically kicking its prey until they died. It had super thick leg bones and strong muscles, and these were used for repeatedly driving its steak knife claws into its prey. Many scientists believe that the Utahraptor hunted in packs, like the most horrifying wolves you've ever seen. They likely targeted prey much larger than themselves, hunting down anything they could eat. The Utahraptor was on average about 10 feet tall and weighed 1,000 pounds. Plus, they kind of looked like birds. The Utahraptor was a deadly combination of a velociraptor and an ostrich. Number 6. Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's time to talk about the king of the dinosaurs. The Tyrannosaurus Rex really needs no introduction. It has a legendary reputation as the ruler of the prehistoric carnivores. It was one of the biggest dinosaurs to ever roam the earth, and its name literally translates to Tyrant Lizard King. According to Live Science, this beast stood over 16 feet tall and was about 40 feet long from snout to tail. It weighed roughly 15,400 pounds and was once believed to be the biggest carnivore in history. We know that not to be true anymore, but the T-Rex is still a special place in our hearts. The Tyrannosaurus Rex had powerful hind legs, it could run faster than any professional athlete, and it had a brain that would rival any animal currently living. This means that not only was it a ferocious predator, but it also had the intellectual prowess to match just about anyone you went to high school with. Of course, there were smaller dinosaurs that could outsmart it, but it was still the ultimate beast of its time. It had a great sense of smell, a bite which was stronger than any animal that has lived since, and it had 60 teeth for ripping and tearing. When it came to hunting, the Tyrannosaurus Rex only needed to bite once. Number 5. Troodon. Compared to many of the dinosaurs scientists discussed today, the Troodon is one of the smallest. It stood only 4.3 feet tall and weighed less than 100 pounds. Still, it was a dangerous predator that you would not want to have met in the wild. It didn't have much strength, but it had a massively complex brain. In fact, the Troodon had the most impressive brain-to-body weight ratio of any dinosaur currently known to scientists. To get a little more complicated, the Troodon had more neural cells packed into specific areas of its brain than other dinosaurs, meaning that its brain functioned more efficiently. Other than just being insanely smart compared to its competition, the Troodon had super strong vision. It had huge eyes, like big black orbs that gave it superb sight. It could see in darkness and hunt nocturnally, and it was very light on its feet. A pack of Troodon would have been far deadlier than any pack of animals living today. They would have easily gotten out of the way of any large predators while tracking and killing things much larger than themselves. A small village of humans would be easy pickings. Number 4. Gigantosaurus. The Gigantosaurus was quite similar to the T-Rex, and yet hugely different in many ways. It definitely competed to be one of the biggest carnivorous dinosaurs of all time. According to the Natural History Museum, it was taller, longer, and thinner than the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Gigantosaurus was also faster by at least 10 miles per hour. It had better balance, its skull was larger and probably thicker, and yet it had a puny brain. The Gigantosaurus had a brain that was just half the size of that of the T-Rex. This makes it a pretty primitive beast that was more brawn than brain. Still, some scientific evidence suggests that it had a very acute sense of smell, which, when coupled with its athletic abilities, made it a formidable force of teeth and claw that weighed at least 8 tons. Unfortunately, the Gigantosaurus and the Tyrannosaurus Rex never met in the wild. The Gigantosaurus lived between 112 and 90 million years ago, missing the T-Rex by just around 7 million years. Number 3. Carcharodontosaurus. Besides just having a strange and unique name, the Carcharodontosaurus was a huge monster to be feared. According to Enchanted Learning, This dinosaur lived somewhere between 110 and 90 million years ago, with most of its fossils being found in North Africa. It was a fierce predator that had a bulky body, ridiculously heavy bones, and short arms with only 3 fingers and a few sharp claws on each hand. And even though the Carcharodontosaurus was larger than the legendary T-Rex, it was a bit more primitive and had a smaller brain. That means that if these two had ever met in combat, the T-Rex could very well have won in a fight. To give you an idea of just how large this beast was, its skull was about the size of an average person. It could run at around 20 miles per hour, much faster than a T-Rex. Plus, the big dino got its annoyingly long name because it translates to shark-toothed lizard, which makes sense considering the serrated teeth inside the Carcharodontosaurus's mouth were about 8 inches long and could slice through flesh like perfectly sharpened switchblades. Number 2. Deinonychus. The Deinonychus, also known as the Terrible Claw, is certainly one of the strangest dinosaurs on the list today. It was the very first dinosaur that convinced scientists that modern birds descended from dinosaurs. This happened in the early 1970s when an American paleontologist named John H. Ostrom noticed how similar the Deinonychus looked to birds. Other paleontologists laughed at him, and the scientific community thought this guy was a joke. Turns out, he was 100% right, and now it appears that chickens are the closest relatives to the Tyrannosaurus Rexes. How messed up is that? As for the Deinonychus itself, it was almost definitely covered with feathers. In fact, it's highly likely that the Tyrannosaurus and almost every other type of raptor had feathers at some point in their life. And much like raptors, the Deinonychus had hind claws that it used to disembowel and rip apart prey. But here's the coolest and least known fact. This dinosaur was the original model for the Velociraptors used in Jurassic Park. As you may already know, Velociraptors are actually quite small. For the Jurassic Park movie, they based their raptors on the Deinonychus. They took away the feathers and changed the name to Velociraptor because they assumed that audiences would have too hard a time of pronouncing Deinonychus. Let this be a lesson to you that you shouldn't just trust things you see, especially in a blockbuster movie. Number 1. Velociraptor. You already know a little bit about the Velociraptor's cousin, the Utahraptor, but it's now time to dig deep on one of the most beloved dinosaurs ever. The Velociraptor lived sometime around 80 million years ago, near the end of the Cretaceous period. It actually got its name in 1924 from the president of the American Museum of Natural History, who combined 2 Latin words meaning swift and robber to give a proper description of just what this dinosaur was like in real life. Basically, it was a speedy thief. The Velociraptor was probably covered in feathers, as indicated by a forearm discovered in Mongolia back in 2007. But of course, the Velociraptor couldn't fly. It instead used its immense speed and insanely sharp claws, plus its advanced intelligence, to hunt and scavenge. They mostly ate reptiles and amphibians, small dinosaurs, and other bite-sized mammals. If Velociraptors were still alive today, they wouldn't actually be that scary. They only had a length of 6.8 feet, meaning that they didn't actually stand that tall. Most average people would be taller than a Velociraptor. Still, considering scientists agree that the Velociraptor could have run at around 40 miles per hour, it probably wouldn't have mattered whether you were bigger than it or not. It still would have hunted and eaten you with dozens of its friends. Number 10. Snake in the Park. A woman recently fought to save the life of her dog after her pet was brutally attacked by a giant python in the middle of a city park. This horrifying incident happened in Hong Kong when a massive python came out of nowhere while a woman was walking her dog Dexter through Sai Kung West Country Park. As you can imagine, snakes don't belong anywhere inside of a city park. They don't belong in city parks, they don't belong in city gardens, and they definitely don't belong in city skate parks. And yet, the way this woman took care of the snake is going to absolutely shock you. Her dog Dexter ran slightly ahead of her and then began barking frantically and making horrifying noises. At first, she thought her pet had run into some kind of wild boar, which are fairly common in Hong Kong. But when she got farther down the path, she saw that her dog was being squeezed to death by a huge python. It had coiled itself around the dog's neck and head and was trying to suffocate it to death. In order to save the life of her dog, the woman began hammering on the snake with her fists. She really did come to the dog's rescue, but her fists weren't deterring the snake at all. It looked like the dog was losing its life already, as Dexter began to slowly stop fighting back. Panicked, Lynx took out a pocket knife and began stabbing the snake mercilessly in its head. That ended up doing the trick, and the snake lost its grip and then began to slither away, leaving the dog confused but still alive. As for what happened to the snake, it probably slithered into the bushes and bled to death from the woman's attack. Number 9. Bull gone loose. At a festival in the northeast of Spain, a bull recently jumped into an audience and went on an insane rampage, attacking spectators left, right and centre. One person ended up being sent to the hospital in critical condition, while another 17 were hurt during the wild attack. The huge bull jumped out of the arena as a group of men were trying to show off their skills by dodging the bull's attacks as it charged at them. As it turned out, the bull didn't really care for being used as a piece of entertainment. It charged to the gates, jumped over the wall, and stampeded into the benches where the public was sitting, watching what you could say is arguably one of the most inhumane things that still happens with animals today, torturing bulls in Spain for entertainment. Well, this time the bull got its revenge. After charging through the stands, the bull actually found its way into the parking lot and caused even more havoc. It then tried to escape into the forest, but unfortunately authorities were quick to put the bull down with a bullet. The injured spectators were taken to the nearest hospital and treated for their injuries, and there were no deaths reported. Maybe now people will think twice before going down to watch people torment a bull for sport. Have you ever gone to watch a bull fight? Or are you against bullfighting yourself? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Then, remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't already for even more awesome new videos. Number 8. Shark in the City. An extremely rare shark attack just happened in Australia. And while this isn't really that strange for shark attacks to happen off the coast of Australia, it is a little unusual when a shark attacks a person in the middle of a city. This attack happened in Perth, when a man swimming in the local Swan River was bit on his upper leg during the first ever shark attack in that area since 1969. Of course, this shark was not very long. It was only about 10 feet, and it was a bull shark. These types of sharks are not typically as horrifying to deal with as great whites, but they are still big and can do some serious damage. According to Kieran Hayter, a local kayaker who came to the man's aid after he was bitten, the water was filled with blood. The shark really took a big bite out of the guy as he swam at Perth's Blackwall Reach Reserve, which is far too close into the city for any shark to be roaming. He was taken to the Royal Perth Hospital in a very grave condition, but was later reported to be making a very good recovery. As for the Swan River itself, this river flows into the ocean through one of Perth's southern ports. Almost nobody would expect a shark to actually swim up the river and start attacking swimmers. The last reported shark fatality that happened in the Swan River was in 1923 when another man was bitten on his legs, but he didn't make it. Mind you, that was nearly 100 years ago. Number 7. Brown bear attack in Russia. It should come as no surprise that there was recently a brown bear attack in the middle of a Russian city. This particular incident was caught on a surveillance video when a young man was walking down the street minding his own business and a bear appeared from behind a tree and came charging towards him. Thinking quickly, the guy stood completely still, thinking that the bear would just pass him by. But it didn't. The bear jumped on him and bit him. In fact, the only thing that saved this guy's life was a nearby taxi driver who laid on his horn and began switching his lights on and off to try and scare the bear, which did in fact work. The bear ran away, and the driver was nice enough to take the injured man to hospital. But what's really crazy about this is that the 26-year-old was attacked in the middle of the city of Yaroslavl, about 250 miles from Moscow. The bear must have snuck in from the woods nearby because it was hungry and then decided that the man would make a nice snack. Unfortunately, local wildlife experts decided that the bear was a threat to human society and it was tracked and killed by rangers. It ended up being a pretty young bear, only around 3 years old and weighing just shy of 200 pounds. Number 6. Death by cassowary. Imagine how embarrassing it would be to be killed by a giant bird in the middle of your own backyard. If you ask me, it would be extremely embarrassing. And yet, that's exactly what happens to a man named Marvin Hayhus when a cassowary killed him in his backyard in his home of Gainesville, Florida. This guy lived 75 years, seeing multiple wars and dramatic changes in every aspect of the world, only to be killed by basically a giant chicken. What's even stranger is that the cassowary was actually his pet. These giant birds are not the best animals to keep around the house, especially in the city, seeing as they grow to be taller than an average human with giant claws on their feet that can easily scoop out your guts. According to the report from CNN, Marvin made the initial call to 911 at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Marvin apparently fell down. The cassowary saw his weakness and it trampled him to death with its claws. Marvin was taken to the local hospital but died from his injuries. Cassowaries are birds native to Australia and New Guinea, and they don't really have any business being in some old man's backyard in Florida. You really have to wonder what people are thinking. Even the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission considers cassowaries to be Class 2 wildlife, which means they pose a serious threat to humans and must be kept in specific cages. These are not the best pets for retirement. Number 5. Hotel Lioness. A lioness was recently captured on surveillance footage when she tried to get a reservation at a local hotel in the Indian city of Junagadh. This happened early Wednesday morning when the lioness strolled into the very centre of town, began sniffing around the hotel parking, then thought about going inside and trying to get a room. This is not something that happens in most places. Lions typically don't wander into the heart of cities and start poking around in parking lots and buildings. The only lucky thing about this incident was that the lioness arrived at the hotel at around 5 o'clock in the morning, meaning there was nobody else there to witness her curious exploring. The big cat came in, she walked around, and then she headed off. According to a statement from the owner of the hotel, big cats actually do frequent this property. Even though it's in the heart of the city, Junagadh is a city that prides itself on being extremely close to a wild area where lions still roam free. The Gir Sanctuary is just a short way off, and sometimes the lions either get bored or confused and decide to take a trip to the big city. The lioness probably got lost and ended up needing to take a break at the hotel. Number 4. Cougar Fights Dog. Next up is a cougar that attacks a small dog in the Canadian province of British Columbia. As you might already know, in North America we have our own big cats to deal with. Cougars may not be as big and as mean as African lions, but they certainly terrorise our cities. The cougar apparently wandered into the local neighbourhood of Coquitlam, went straight into a man's yard, grabbed his pet dog in its powerful jaws, and then ran off with an easy dinner. Lucky for the dog, its owner was able to chase away and scare the cougar, forcing it to drop the dog from its jaws and take off. According to the report from North Shore News, the dog did quickly receive veterinary treatment for the bite wounds inflicted by the cougar, and the dog was expected to make a full recovery. This isn't a rare incident either. Cougars travel all the way along creeks and rivers, directly into the heart of our cities, where they prey on small cats, dogs, and even children if they get a chance. Number 3. Kicked by a moose. This next story is a reminder not to touch wildlife, especially when they show up uninvited to a city near you. There's no better example of what not to do than the woman who was recently caught trying to pet a wild moose in Colorado. The entire incident was captured on camera. The woman walked up to the random moose. It clearly didn't like her at all, and it kicked out its legs in defense. What's totally crazy is that this happened even as the nearby people were screaming at the woman to tell her to get away from the wild animal, calling her an idiot and telling her to keep her distance. Of course, she completely ignored the reasonable advice from the people nearby and paid the price when the noose lashed out and tried to kick her in the face. Lucky for the woman, she didn't sustain any serious injury. However, she was definitely embarrassed. After the moose tried to kick her, she put her head down, didn't look at anyone, and swiftly walked away humiliated. Let this be a lesson to everyone. If a giant moose randomly walks into your neighbourhood in the middle of the day, maybe stay in your car and don't try to touch it. Number 2. Rat attacks. This story of rampaging rodents in the city is so horrifying that it has to be included among tales of giant animals. Rats in New York City are apparently attacking outside diners after being starved to death during the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone in New York knows that there is no animal more terrifying than a city rat. And because the coronavirus pandemic forced the rats into a state of starvation and desperation, one which they had not suffered previously, they have now turned to attacking people brazenly who are dining outside at restaurants, trying to get their piece of the pie. Forget staying in the sewers. Rats in New York City are now so bold that they will climb out of the gutters, onto your shoe, and even up your pants leg if it means they can get a piece of your artisanal chicken sandwich. Before you know it, they'll even be trying to drink your coffee. Number 1. A lynx in the suburbs. In the northern Canadian city of Whitehorse, a lynx recently invaded a neighbourhood and attacked somebody's dog. This was a Canadian lynx, one of the most gorgeous cats on the planet. The lynx is far more ferocious than most people's dogs, though significantly smaller than a cougar. A spokesperson for the Department of the Environment said in a recent report that the lynx population in the Yukon is in a precarious state because they don't have enough food out in the wild. This is causing animals like the lynx and polar bears to move deeper and deeper into the cities, where their only option is feasting on your pet. The dog in this most recent attack is believed to have made a full recovery, though it is also believed that the same lynx attacked a different dog in a different neighbourhood just a week before, making it a serial dog attacker. But really, you can't blame the cat for just trying to have a meal. After all, A lynx attacking your dog is like your house cat attacking a rat. What's the biggest animal you've ever seen in the city? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and stop by again for another amazing video. What's the scariest animal that you have ever encountered in the wild? Do you know if the animal saw you as well, or did you feel threatened?